Welcome to another presentation of Curtis Jones writing. I'm going to adjust the camera. I'm going to do a repeat of chapter 1 of Love Endures All Things, The Deep South. This is the third book in the trilogy of Love Endures All Things. And I noticed that someone let me know that there was almost no sound on the first recording of Love Endures All Things, The Deep South. And so I'm going to repeat that, and then I will add some new chapter afterwards. The title of Love Endures All Things, The Deep South, Chapter 1 is Eufaula, Alabama. So let's pick up with Chapter 1, and I'll complete this before I move on to the next new presentations. The trip down to Eufaula for Stephanie's interview was a little vacation and to see part of the world we had never seen before. We went south from Arkansas through Louisiana to New Orleans. We did not go into town, but it was quite interesting. When we stopped for gas or to eat, the local accents were very hard for us to understand. We continued through Mississippi, and we could understand those folks more easily than those we encountered in Louisiana. As we traveled east, we encountered Alabama for the first time. We thought it was a nice place. It was quite beautiful. There was a hurricane in late August, namely Debbie, that year, and we drove right into the western side of the storm as it moved north. The storm was not as bad, however. We were not allowed to get into the water at the beach. It was raining pretty hard anyway, but there was a rip tide that would pull you out to sea if you got into the water. This was our introduction to the South, and it was not like Oklahoma or Colorado, and neither was it like California. It was its own unique, special place, unlike any other we had ever visited. We liked it. The interview went well, and Stephanie was hired on the spot. She was given a few days to get moved down to the hotel where we were to stay for the next month. We started home on the shortest route we could find. Stephanie wanted to give a 2-week notice to her current employer, and we were able to stay another night before we hit the road at 5 a.m. We always took turns driving unless Stephanie was too tired to drive. We got back to Muldrow, Oklahoma at 6 p.m. That was the same day. We sat up late that night talking about how excited we were to start a new chapter in our lives. We talked about how pretty the little town of Eufaula, Alabama was, and how neat the South was in general. Little did we know just how much the South would change this old married couple. It would surely change anyone who ventured to live here after being in other parts of the world. The South turned out to be the most interesting place we'd ever lived. The 2 weeks passed very quickly, and it was time to head south. We knew it would take 13 hours to get there, so we left at 4 a.m. on Sunday morning. We took turns driving, and it was my turn after we left Memphis, Tennessee. We went on Highway 78 to Birmingham, Alabama. On that stretch of road, there was 2 large fishing ponds, one on either side of the road. As we passed this spot, I struggled to see if there were any alligators visible from the road. I thought the South was run over with the creatures. After I got there, or here, I learned that they were not everywhere as I had thought. In fact, we did not see an alligator for several months after we got to Eufaula. There was one thing we noticed right away: the difficulty leaving our family behind when we moved on. Of course, we missed our children, but especially missed the grandkids. I used to babysit for Mike's two children most every day. I think that loneliness was harder on me than it was on Stephanie. She only seen them mostly on the weekends. The stay in the motel is a different style of living. You have to go out to eat most every meal. Laundry is done at a coin operated laundromat. The laundry is packed up and hauled to the laundromat. It is washed, dried, and folded up before you can go back home. We learned from this experience to stay at motels that had an on site laundromat. Otherwise, I had to drive Stephanie to work and go pick up her car when needed. I didn't look for a house until we had been there for 2 weeks. It gave us time to save the initial rental expense. Most places require first and last month's rent and a cleaning deposit. This can be as much as 3 times the monthly rental fees. When we had the utilities, and then we had the utility deposits as well. We had not rented a house for almost 20 years, and we were shocked at the price to get into a rental. This wasn't that far from the down payment to buy an older home. In all, we spent 4 weeks in the motel. I searched quite diligently to find a suitable house as close to where Stephanie worked as I could. Life in a motel can be so boring. This, with little to occupy your days, I began to take long walks down to the lake and to the boat ramp to watch the activities there. I finally found a nice 3 bedroom house on a road called Clayton, Road toward Clayton, Alabama. Stephanie had found a shortcut just off of this road. The landlord I had was a kind old gentleman named Wade Champion with his wife Hazel. I had to have a fence in the backyard and be in our price range. Wade liked me, and we only had to pay first month and a small deposit. I liked Wade and Hazel immediately after he told me what I would it would cost me to move in. We agreed and signed a 1 year lease. When I told Stephanie about it, she was just as happy as I was. We moved into the house as soon as I got the utilities turned on. We were lucky to find Wade because he thought it better to rent to an older couple with no children at home. It looked like we were both winners in this agreement. It was the first time we were referred to as an older couple. Wade was a very good landlord. They were the best landlords we would ever have. They were a blessing to us. After renting the house, I went to the local furniture store and I bought a used bedroom set with 2 folding beach chairs. The house came with a cook stove and a refrigerator. It was a 3 bedroom with a master bath and a bathroom in the hall. We were very comfortable there. This is when it became difficult to pay all the bills. We owed 2 houses in Oklahoma, or we owned 2 houses in Oklahoma, and rented one in Alabama now. I had sold one house to one of our sons, but he never made but one payment the whole time he lived there. The house in town we rented to another son who made all of the house payments into the bank for us. We still had the taxes, insurance on both places, so we made do. About a month after we rented the place from Wade, Stephanie took a 4-day weekend so we could move our furniture down and get my pickup. It was a 13-hour drive one way. We really needed the 4-day weekend if we were going to get everything done. The trip to Oklahoma was uneventful, and all the kids and some friends came and loaded all of the stuff we decided to take to Alabama. We had loaded everything we were going to take by Sunday, and we were finished. We were on our way early Monday morning. I drove the U-Haul and used a car hauler to pull the car. Stephanie drove my pickup and pulled the trailer with our hot tub. She went to work Tuesday, and I got busy unloading the truck, and I returned it that day. It was the last day we were able to keep it without paying an extra charge. Stephanie started getting up or setting up the house as soon as she got home every day from work. It didn't take long until we were at home again. The beach chairs we had used for a month were retired to their intended use, and we enjoyed our recliners once again. We went to the beach at Panama City, Florida, as much as 2 weekends a month in the warm weather. We were burned every time for the first 3 trips to the beach. We loved Eufaula. It was convenient for what we wanted to do. We took full advantage of our new location as often as possible. When we went for the furniture, we brought our Shar dogs home with us. My mother had kept our female, Cleo, short for Cleopatra. She was pregnant, and I didn't want to leave her with a son who had to go to work most days. Cleo had delivered the pups within a week, and we added 7 little Shar puppies to our family. The last litter she had uh, brought was featured on the local news station, Channel 5 in Fort Smith, Arkansas, when they were born. I sold all 6 of them for $1,000 each. When the Shar pups first open their eyes, they may have to have a medical procedure called an eye tack. This is when the eyelid is turned inward and the eyelashes rub the eyeball and scratch the eye. The procedure sews the eyelid in such a way that they cannot turn inward and injure the eyeball. When the pups were 3 weeks old, I had to get their little eyes tacked to prevent blindness. No one anywhere near me knew how to do that. I called my daughter Michelle, and her vet had done the operation on her pups. I made a trip to her house and spent the night and had the pup's eyes done the next day. She lived in Mississippi. I then and came home proud that I didn't have to go all the way back to Oklahoma to have this procedure done. When I began to sell the pups, I had an elder from the church I went and asked for one of the pups. I took the pups to the local vet and had them looked at to make sure they were healthy. I had Randall who was the elder that wanted the pups, and his wife come by and pick out the pup that they wanted. They took him home, and 3 days later, they called me and said that the pup's eye burst and they wanted to return him. I said, bring him back and get another. I had never had such a thing happen with any of my pups. When they came, the wife said that while their little grandchildren were playing with him in the backyard, and when the pup began to cry like it had was in pain, that the little boy threw him down and ran out. They ran out to him to see that one of the eyes was put out. Randall was a rich man whose grandchild had poked the eye out of this little puppy, and he made me pay for the carelessness that he exhibited. He was no Christian. Wearing the name doesn't mean anything to some people. I gave that puppy to a nice family that wanted one but couldn't afford a puppy. After the vet got through with it, he said it was otherwise healthy. I didn't sell any more pups in Eufaula. I called the puppy buyer that I knew in Missouri and sold the whole litter, save those two, at least all that were left to that man. I came home with $4,500 in my pocket, and we paid off some of the bills and had a trip to the beach as a bonus. I never did like Randall after he cheated me. He wanted to buy a house that a woman who worked with Stephanie wanted to sell. Randall asked me about it, and I knew all of the problems the house had, and I said nothing about it to Randall, and he bought the house. It was an awful mistake to buy that house. He later told me. I said nothing, but I did smile just a little on the inside. One day we got up and the news story came over the TV. An airplane had crashed into one of the two towers called the Twin Towers in New York City. Stephanie and I looked at each other and asked if that was some kind of sick joke. Stephanie left for work, and in about 5 minutes, another announcement was made that another airplane had crashed into the other of the two towers. All I felt was disbelief. I called Stephanie to ask if she had heard about the second crash, and while we were talking, the Pentagon was struck. We were clearly under attack from the terrorists in the Middle East. Shortly after the towers began to collapse, the sorrow of that day was overwhelming to the whole world. Pardon me. I'm sure that I'm sure that is the way Stephanie and I handled the news was much like everyone else. We were quiet and didn't talk much. What was there to say when so much life was stolen away by hateful persons? When Stephanie and I were in college, we were very mistrustful of anyone who looked like they were from the Middle East. My landlord had been on a bus tour of New York, and when he got home, he showed me his footage of the two towers taken when the attack happened. His film was like the national news footage. He was maybe 2 miles away when this happened, and I'm sure most people remember where they were when the announcement was made. I even remember what I was doing. Mike, our oldest son, came down to visit us on their way to the beach. It was a nice visit. It was just after the attack. The visit helped to move the mood back to a little bit of what was normal before the two towers came down. Stephanie's plant was sold shortly after these events. The owner of the plant were from Thailand, and the majority of those folks were of the Muslim religion. I wondered if it had been some, I wondered if that could have been the reason the plant sold. Whatever the reason, my Stephanie was in management, and she alone, she along with all the other management of that plant were dismissed. She had 3 weeks to work before her last day. It seemed that the effects of the attack were reaching even into the southern part of Alabama. Stephanie called the headhunter that got her this job and put him to work looking for another job. Within a week, he had found the plant in Farmerville, Louisiana, that needed a quality assurance manager. Stephanie got the call, and within a few days, an interview was set up. Stephanie wanted me to go with her, and we took the car and drove down to Farmerville, Louisiana for the interview. She was hired that day, and this was going to be our next adventure. We didn't know much about Louisiana, but we were about to find out. The company was going to provide a moving service and sent Mayflower to move us. We made all the arrangements with them, and they packed up everything that and would keep it all in storage until we called to arrange for the delivery. They even hauled one car and and the hot tub. The best move ever. We didn't have to do anything. All we had to do was pack up what we needed at the motel, and I took my computer with us. That is how we kept in touch with the family. I hope you enjoyed this one. I will repost it and I'll listen to it first, make sure the sound worked. God bless you and keep you. And in a little bit, I will probably post another.